The criminal procedure problem from July of 1997 is another straightforward and reasonably easy fact pattern. What's easy about it is the call of the question organizes our arguments for us, and it spoon-feeds us most of the issues. So we've got to be good stenographers and pretty good paralegals, but there isn't a huge amount of legal reasoning required here. This is much closer to being a clerical question. Still, there are a couple of black-letter law issues that are a little tricky, and, as often is the case with criminal law and procedure questions, it's a racehorse, and we've got to work hard to cover everything on time. Take a look at the two-part call of the question, and we'll see it's actually got a lot more subparts than that. 1. How should the appellate court rule on Don's arguments that A. The uncontradicted evidence established that the hospital physician, not Don, killed Vic? Discuss. Well, let's just stop right there for a moment. If we've got a situation where a criminal defendant injures somebody badly enough for them to be hospitalized, and then that person dies in the hospital, that almost certainly equals homicide, and the defendant would likely be convicted, even if there was some fairly egregious negligence in the hospital. Move on. 1B. The court erred in instructing on murder in the commission of a felony. Discuss. Well, we'll have to examine the facts carefully to answer that one. We can't really shoot from the hip before we've read the fact pattern for that part. 1C. The court should have instructed on manslaughter. Discuss. Well, again, we're going to have to analyze the facts carefully to be able to respond. We can't do it just by looking at the question itself. Look at the second call of the question. How should the appellate court rule on Alex's arguments that A. The evidence is insufficient to support his conviction as an aider and abettor? Discuss. Well, again, we're going to have to look at the facts. I'm glad that they're testing aiding and abetting in this fact pattern because I think it's very useful for you to be exposed to it here. We see it every time the multistate is administered, but it is a fairly rare issue on essays. 2B. How should the appellate court rule on Alex's arguments that the evidence is insufficient to support his conviction for first-degree murder, even if it does support a finding that he aided and abetted Don? Discuss. Well, here's another pretty straightforward argument. We will look at the facts. We'll try to reach our own conclusions. Well, now take a look at the top of the fact pattern. Let's have a look together at how the examiners chose to test these issues. In paragraph 1, we meet Don, our first defendant. He arrives home late at night and finds the victim assaulting his own wife, Don's wife. Vic escaped before Don could catch him. Don is cynical about the legal system, like many of the people in the legal system, and Don tries to hunt this guy down for 3 months, and apparently fails. So that's it for paragraph 1. We know one thing for sure. If Don ultimately catches up with Vic and kills him, after hunting for him for several months, it's going to be rather difficult to establish a claim of passion or heat of passion in the killing. Next, go to paragraph 2. Here we meet Alex, our second defendant. Don doesn't know Alex, and Alex also hates Vic and wants him dead. Alex heard of Don's desire to locate and retaliate against Vic, and so, hoping to provoke that retaliation, Alex sent Don an anonymous note giving Vic's location. Okay? If Don is about to go and kill Vic based on this note, it looks to me as if Alex is properly convicted of everything he's charged with, because this fact pattern has been set up to make it look as if Alex is using Don as a weapon to kill Vic. And even if Alex doesn't do anything beyond that, it's probably good enough for him to be convicted, both as an aider and an abettor, and perhaps even as a principal. But let's read on. Don takes a pistol, finds Vic where the note said he would be, and then we get an interesting fact. There's a heated argument, and Don accuses Vic of trying to rape his wife. Vic denies. Don shoots the victim in the head. Well, I'm not very impressed by any claim of heat of passion in this fact pattern. Go to paragraph 3. Vic is rushed to the hospital where he was preliminarily diagnosed as brain dead. He's put on life support systems for 3 days, and all brain function has ceased. That's good enough to establish homicide right there. The hospital physician disconnects the life support, and Vic is pronounced actually dead. Well, that is good enough for sure to establish the liability of Don for homicide. Of course, the hospital doctors did turn off the machines, but it was the defendant who shot a bullet into the victim's head. In paragraph 4, we see Don and Alex both charged with murder, and they are a very unsympathetic pair of defendants, aren't they? They don't really seem to have anything going for them in terms of a defense. But as a defense lawyer, I've had to make arguments in cases similarly difficult. Let's see what else we're given in this final paragraph of the fact pattern. All the above facts are established by evidence at trial. The prosecution argues that the murder is willful, deliberate, and premeditated, and now we get to a dicier argument by the prosecutor, that it was committed during the commission of felonies of assault with a deadly weapon and burglary. Okay, stop right there. We don't have any facts that establish burglary. And furthermore, it doesn't seem reasonable to consider that assault with a deadly weapon would be something other than a crime that would merge into the homicide. Certainly it isn't the sort of murder in the process of committing a felony that we would be accustomed to seeing in, for example, kidnapping or rape cases. So Alex is alleged to have aided and abetted murder, felony murder, burglary, and assault with a deadly weapon. But the court ruled there was no evidence to warrant instructions on manslaughter. The jury convicted both defendants of first-degree murder. Both have appealed. And then we get the elaborate call of the question once again. Okay, well, take a look at the outline of issues that I've presented, and you'll see that this is one of the most simple, straightforward, easy outlines of any outline I present in this entire course. Have a look. All I'm basically doing is lining up the subparts, turning them into headings, and then I'm going to address each one as a short answer problem. So, Don's arguments, I have 3 that correspond to the call of the question, and a conclusion. Alex's arguments include the 2 that he wishes to make from the call of the question, and another conclusion. This fact pattern did not take a lot of time to outline. But, like many criminal law and procedure questions, the analysis is not so simple, and we've got to do a fair amount of it. So let's take a quick look at my answer, and I'll show you where the law and the facts touch one another. First, we start with Don's arguments, and we'll see, once again, I lead with the result, and I lead with the facts. The appellate court is going to dismiss out of hand the argument that the physician was the actual killer here. You'll see I very carefully focus on all of the facts relating to this issue. And I think it's a spurious argument. The court correctly concluded that it was Don, not the physician, that killed this victim. Next, we turn to felony murder, and here I am less sympathetic to the trial court. I think the court was wrong in this case. And as we see in the analysis, my rationale, I think, is reasonable and correct. So we look at assault with a deadly weapon. That certainly is not a predicate offense for felony murder. It's a lesser included offense of homicide. It is part of the killing rather than a separate crime like kidnapping would be. So we go further to consider the burglary charge. And here again, I go into very specific and, in fact, comprehensive detail about what we know from the facts. And it doesn't look as if we have seen a breaking and entering of any structure here, although it may be possible that that's what happened. We're not told that in the fact pattern. So I don't think that the court's felony murder instruction was reasonable. I conclude it was in error. Next, we move on to manslaughter, and here I think the trial court is back on a strong footing. If this crime had been committed right after Don saw this alleged assault, then a manslaughter instruction would be appropriate, and it might actually be the offense that the defendant would be convicted of, because a provocation defense requires a showing of time. But in this case, we've got a 3-month lapse of time, and that makes a heat of passion defense ludicrous. And so I think the trial court correctly refused the instruction, and I conclude overall that Don is correctly convicted of first-degree murder. Next, we move to the arguments of Alex. Here, it looks as if Alex is just wrong across the board. Obviously, Alex is an aider and abetter. And here again, I've got one paragraph of concise analysis in which I find a home both for the facts and the law. An aider and abetter is somebody who knowingly helps someone else commit a crime. And here, it's obvious that Alex aided and abetted Don in his efforts to achieve vengeance. Next, we turn to first-degree murder liability, and here it is, I think, evident that this defendant is going to be convicted as an aider and abetter. He won't be convicted based on the felony murder analysis, so Alex did not aid or abet either assault with a deadly weapon or burglary, and so he can't be convicted of first-degree murder based on this felony murder theory. But still, it is clear that Alex was Don's accomplice. He aided and abetted Don's murder of Vic, and he had the specific intent that the victim die. So I say that makes Alex properly convicted of first-degree murder. And that wraps up a consideration of a fairly tricky, but at the same time straightforward criminal law and procedure fact pattern.